we all went to him and said, why don't you guys develop this? And another person, why don't you develop it? So why don't you guys just get together and figure out what you want me to develop across now? So we kind of pooled our ideas together, and Mike, that's, I don't know, that's just AI. I think you're much better. But Mike, you can see he learned how to turn a phone into money there. He likes
oh,
stuff, right? So,
all good. Yeah.
Communication legend, Mike Tessler. We'll turn it over.
Oh, some good wake up music. Oh. Wake up number one is turn on my mic. Can you guys hear me now? Hello, hello. All right. Good morning. Thanks, Clark, and thanks, Joe, for continuing to kind of lead the CCA through lots of years of hard work and changes in the industry. So I wanted to thank you guys for kind of continuing the drive momentum. It's been a while. It's pretty successful. I want to thank the sponsors and obviously all the members that participate. So this morning, and I'm going to try to figure out, is this synchronized or not? Mark? You have the same problem? Okay. So this morning, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about, shockingly, AI. But I think what I want to do is I want to kind of take a different approach and not talk so much about the capabilities that are coming out in the latest unified communications or contact center CX world, but really kind of address how enterprises should look at AI and how they should think about adopting AI inside their organizations. So a little bit of a different twist. I'm sure you'll hear a lot about the latest CX innovations and UC innovations, but this is kind of an area that I'm kind of interested in. And hopefully you walk away with a couple of interesting ideas, things you want to try. So that's my goal this morning. The work that I've done in the last year, since I spoke last year, was really working with large enterprises on AI adoption and how the challenges that they find themselves in trying to find out how to adopt AI. And so I'll talk a little bit about that and how to kind of find the right journey. And the idea here is to really kind of talk about the capabilities inside the organizations, and it'll be less tech and more strategy this morning. So hopefully you walk away with a couple of good ideas. So for the agenda, I'm going to go through a couple of, this is kind of where I'm going to take some AI tech, but I'm really going to transform it and talk a little bit about what does that mean to me? What do I think it should mean to you guys? Then I'm going to kind of review the recommendations that I use with enterprises for AI adoption. What are the things you need to do to kind of get your organization thinking about AI, how to modernize, etc. And then finally, I'll finish off with some use cases, looking at companies that are helping enterprises with AI adoption in specific verticals, specific areas, specific problems, kind of give you an idea of what is the art of the possible in the area of AI. So first of all, I wanted to kind of go back and think about the world before ChatGPT and after ChatGPT. And what's interesting is when I looked at it, and I said, okay, well, how long has that been? And I used my handy dandy calculator and I counted 866 days to today. And you'd say, well, why did I put days? I kind of specifically chose days because in any one week, you might find that there's announcement after announcement in AI technology, innovation. So the AI as a field is just exploding every single day. And what has happened post ChatGPT introduction? It was a kind of an interesting introduction because really it hit end users first, and then those end users started to think about how to bring that AI into the enterprise, and actually creating quite a bit of friction when I could go home and use ChatGPT or my other favorite AI tools, Gemini. But when I got to the office, I was told, no, we're not ready for using AI in the enterprise. So interesting idea of AI going directly to and seeing explosive adoption from ChatGPT, but not really then struggling internally in bringing those technologies into the enterprise. And you see, conversational AI becoming exploding, revolutionizing the capabilities every day, getting better. And it's hard to find any company that doesn't matter what field they're in, they've got some AI roadmap, AI features, AI capabilities in their products. So amazingly fast innovation cycles that is introduced by AI. Before I get into the meat of it, it's, last year I tried to motivate folks to think about AI, and so say, why now again? Okay, why now? Why should you think about AI? How fast should you move? And it's become clear over the last 12 months that companies that really kind of engage with the AI journey, really think about how to transform their organizations, will outperform the laggards. So if you think you're moving fast, you're probably not moving fast enough. There's always someone moving faster. Hopefully there's someone moving slower behind you. But it's really important to think about it because the outcomes are pretty fundamental. The technology is quite transformative. Whether or not you're thinking about cost, whether you think about new revenue streams, AI is extremely transformative. So it's important for all of us to think about what does that mean in our daily lives. Other interesting thing is we saw AI over the last 12 months really infuse across the whole organization. People were, playing around with use cases in different departments, and over time we've seen it actually impact almost every functional area. And you see the growth potential of kind of AI technology across verticals and across functional areas as exploding. So it's really proven to be pretty effective, pretty transformative across all departments. You can see here, you got marketing, sales, operations, finance, and even HR. So across the board, we're seeing people leverage the technology to transform their organizations across the organization. And finally, the last thing is, which a lot of people forget about sometimes, is really think about AI, sit back, think about how you're going to transform, how you're going to create new business models, new revenue streams. Often when I engage with customers, I ask them, okay, what kind of data do you have that potentially could be leveraged by AI? And almost always they say, well, we have no data. And we start talking and we start examining that. There's obviously data in the organization. Couldn't operate without some knowledge as an organization, whether it's process engineering, whether it's customer intelligence. You always have data that's available. And then thinking about how you might get more data. So I do a fair amount of work in the wireless space and IoT, and huge amount of sensors now creating data. Again, AI can really leverage that sensor data. So thinking about whether or not you could get more data into the organization through delivering new capabilities, partnerships, or existing data sources that you have in your organization. So really important to think about this. And I'll talk a little bit more when I talk about the enterprise adoption. So let me first cover three, I'd say, big insights. I'm going to call them small insights. I call them big insights. And over the year, I've kind of seen things, conversations around AI and AI technology, and kind of three things that kind of really very simple things that surface to share with you. The first one is I now live in Austin, Texas. It's the world of live music, if anybody doesn't know, and I have lots of music friends, and they're all kind of freaked out with AI. So this as a songwriter, is the world over? In a conversation with some songwriters, I try to explain to them the underlying theory of AI. And what that is we index a huge amount of data, okay, these large language models, and then the AI really thinks about it. It slices and dices it and gives you an answer based on math. And so the first thing is you tell creative people, if it hasn't existed before, it's not going to show up in a song now. Okay, so you still have an opportunity to kind of create net new capabilities. Why is that important to everybody here? Why is that important to enterprise? It's the old line of whatever you feed the AI model is the results you're going to get. So as we start rolling out smaller models, industry vertical models, models you might deploy internally in your organization, remember, if you feed it trash, you're going to get trash as output. So it's really important as you start thinking about it, it's only as good as the data that you're feeding it will be what you get out of it. The second thing that we start seeing in some industries is where people just kind of blindly use AI to generate content, and the content is becoming just the same. So, 20 companies all talking about the exact same things. The collateral sounds the same. There's nothing, it's boring, okay? And so it's really important to think about the human dynamics here and how you re-enter some human energy, human content in your AI-generated content. But it's amazing as you see this convergence of messaging into bleh, okay? So you don't want to go to market with bleh, okay? Not good. The second thing is to think about the evolution of AI. And this is kind of, I'm thinking about the next 12 to 18 months. And where AI and a lot of people that you talk to are still focused is kind of what I call the first stage, which is search. AI, most of us, when we started using AI, we really used AI as a replacement for search. We'd ask the AI, what's the 3 places in Paris I should visit? Okay, and so it was a different way than using your standard Google search, getting a bunch of links, you'd actually get an answer. So this is what we call retrieval. Retrieval has a pretty interesting opportunity in the enterprise, and you can see where people are now starting to think about indexing all of their content and being able to really easily get access to that information. So instead of looking up a document, flipping through it, finding the paragraph that matters, I can now chat with my documentation. So retrieval is still a very important part of the evolution as it goes from kind of the consumer world of search into the enterprise around retrieval UI. The second area is, again, lots of buzzwords, generative AI, but now where you start feeding these AI models with context. Okay, I'm still not really providing it a lot of proprietary data, but I'm really feeding it context. I want you to do this kind of task, and providing a fair amount of context and letting the AI generate responses. It's amazing how few people actually use AI in this very interactive context setting mode, okay? And try an example, load something, ask a question, and then take a few minutes to actually generate context and let it go, and the results are dramatically different. The last part of this evolution that we can see, and again, a lot of people talking about agentic AI, word just drives me crazy. I don't really know what that means, but anyways, it's really taking these, these AI engines and interconnecting them into your organizations, into your services, into your capabilities. So getting data into the AI agents automatically, and then eventually letting those AI agents autonomously perform operations carefully. Be careful how those roll out. But clearly, this is where where the power of AI will explode in terms of now taking over certain functions in operations. Lots of questions around this agent AI. How do you test it? How do you validate it? How do you know it's done the right thing? When do you know that it's gone off the road? So there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be solved around the agent AI world, but it's rapidly moving, and it's hard not to pick up a piece of material context around AI and hear all around agentic AI. The third trend, which is interesting for all of us, is that almost all of the public domain data has been indexed. There's very little left out there. All these large language models have consumed all the public domain data. So I'm estimating 99% of all the public domain data has been indexed. Probably the 1% is the stuff that gets generated every day. And again, back to my point of kind of polluting the pond, a lot of this AI generated content goes back into the models and starts to make everything sound the same. So just be careful around this large language public domain models. What's interesting is if you look at overall, I took the stat, I can't remember where I stole the stat from, I'll have to look it up. Only 1% of what we call proprietary enterprise or personal knowledge has been indexed. So think about it personally, what do you know? What are your skills? What are your capabilities? All these things are not indexed, right? All the stuff you have in your head, in your notebooks, in your documents, these are all not indexed as of yet. And that becomes the really big opportunity for everybody to think about, how do I now take all of the proprietary data that I have in my organization, how do I index it? For what purpose am I indexing it? How do I get value out of that? What's the cost of indexing and so I saw a really simple, this is my tip number one, saw a very simple idea about how to capture your data. And I'll use this example around marketing. So we have some marketing folks in the room. So Janet just walked in. Hi, Janet. It's taking all of your marketing guidelines, presentation, brand content, sales playbooks, anything that you have around your company knowledge about your tone, your messaging, your key value propositions, and grabbing all those, for the techies in the room, structured it in a JSON. Okay, so the idea here is take all of that materials and code it. Okay, sounds scarier than it is. And can't really see on the side there. That's the JSON that I picked, I grabbed. And there you could go from very simple. It could be 3 or 4 lines of JSON that says, hey, my brand is authoritative. The tone is this, or my key value propositions are that. Here's what we want to highlight. And then everybody takes that JSON and feeds it into the AI machine, whatever model you're using. And then what you have is brand consistency, you have messaging consistency, etc. This is something you can do like without any super technology. You just kind of take your brand documents, convert them into JSON, load them up, and everybody now is producing content using the brand guidelines. Think about that across the organization. Engineering principles, design principles, repair principles, anything that you have in an organization can be loaded in a very simple way. You don't have to make some huge investment. You can test it out and work it through. And then finally, take that materials and start to kind of look at it every so often, expand it, adapt it, improve it, change it. And again, it gets captured in the proprietary model. This is a very simple way. There's more elaborate ways of doing it. This is what I call the down and dirty. It doesn't cost you much money to get started and test out how this would impact. So going back to my previous thing around context, this is a way to standardize the context in your generative AI across all your employees. So everybody's producing, whether it's a letter out of HR, sales, marketing, it's all picking up the same brand capabilities. Kind of a big boon for the marketing brand folks because it really kind of standardizes it across the organization. So those are three insights that I kind of take, not so much tech, but really kind of think about it from an operational and strategy perspective. All right, let me switch gears to the strategy recommendations for enterprises. And I've worked with a number of enterprises, helping them kind of figure out the journey for AI. And there's a lot of, you've heard a lot of these obstacles, and I'll cover some of those in a minute. And what I do is I come up with these five elements. I always like 3 to 5 elements. Anybody's worked with me before? And the first one is build an enterprise-wide strategy. I have a slide on that. And it's really number 1, but it's actually the most important item that I try to have enterprises think about. So I'll show an example in a minute. Set realistic goals, adopt an agile approach, engage with the stakeholders, the broader stakeholders, and understand where your current set of vendors and future vendors fit into your AI journey. Kind of a really important set of dynamics as AI is changing the vendor playing field quite dramatically, quite quickly. So think about that. So the first one is build an enterprise-wide strategy. And this is actually an enterprise strategy from the company I'm on board of called Bolden Networks. We build large digital infrastructure. Probably the largest project right now is we're enabling the London Underground and the New York Underground 5G, a couple $1 billion investment. So if you're in any of those cities and you get super fast Wi-Fi or 5G, then that's provided by us. And what we did is we created a model. What we were struggling with is really to kind of get the organization aligned on an AI journey. A lot of folks had all kinds of ideas, fears, concerns, thoughts, business cases. Everybody's running in different directions. And what we try to do is create a single slide. And this is for them. It may not be your slide, probably shouldn't be. But what we did is we created these 3 layers. And let me talk generically, not so much about Bolden, but layer 1 really turns out to be where you want to start. And it's really about personal productivity. So how does every employee think about using AI in their day-to-day work? and then how to make sure they're doing it properly, the proper guidelines, etc. But it's really an individualistic personal productivity layer. So it's easy to get started. Lots of organizations in the enterprise have Microsoft as a product, as an infrastructure. So a lot of them are using Copilot. You can use ChatGPT. If you're a Google shop, you can use Gemini. It doesn't really matter. But it's really down to that personal productivity focus. Layer 2 is where you start thinking about breaking out of individuals and really thinking about either teams or business processes. So back to the Bolden example, what do we kind of thought about, okay, we got a lot of things we do, but ultimately as a company, we do three things. We design big networks, we deploy these networks, install and deploy, and we operate and manage and survey these networks. When we start thinking about these very large business processes, it's where 80% of all our staff live and work every day. How do we make that more efficient? How do we produce faster networks? How do we do faster designs? How do we build more cost effectively? How do we repair and return our networks to service faster? All those things. We start thinking about those big business processes. And that requires more thinking, more collaboration, more teams, more data structures, more data strategies, more investment. So generally, this is, you want to get started with layer 1 and then start to think about how you make bigger impacts by really fundamentally changing the way your organization is run. And what does that mean for each of you? It depends on what you do. If you're building networks, deploying subscribers, how do you take advantage of that? How could you automate? How could you AI enable those processes? And finally, layer 3 is really kind of things you couldn't do before. What are those things that were not possible before that you can now bring to market? New services, new capabilities, with the data that you have, with the data that you create, the data that you partner with. What are those new capabilities and new services? And really, it's best to go from top to bottom in this case. Layer 1, personal productivity and teams, and then finally to thinking about new products and new services. And in Bolden, what we do is we take the slide and we present to the board. We basically overlay all the little projects we have across these three domains. Everybody in the organization knows this is the strategy roadmap. It's very simple to communicate, very simple to educate everybody in the organization. Important parts of the enterprise-wide strategy roadmap. The second thing is to set realistic goals. And this, again, for example, that we worked, in a bigger company, people want to say, oh, we're investing in, Copilot licenses or ChatGPT licenses, whatever you're spending money on. What are we going to get out of it? And so what we did is we tried to set a very realistic goal for the personal productivity layer at 10%. So with 2,000 employees, the way we went to the board and said, we don't have to hire the next 200 people if we got a 10% productivity. We don't really look at AI internally as cost reduction or labor reduction. It's really about getting our teams to do more with less hiring, less expansion. And the second area is really about understanding where all those costs are, those big costs are in the organization, those big business processes that you run, and how can you squeeze cost out of there? How can you make it more efficient? How can you be more competitive? So really thinking about what was realistic around, okay, as we design networks, can we design networks faster, cheaper, etc. What's interesting in working with larger enterprises is the first thing they try to do when they think about AI is apply a waterfall methodology. IT guys love these, when they want to implement a CRM or ERP, they plan an 18 to 24-month transition. It just simply doesn't work in the world of AI. Mostly because the technology is moving so quickly. We don't really understand. A lot of times when we think about the AI, we're not really sure exactly what the outcomes are going to be. And so we have to move to a much more, stealing from the software world, much more agile approach and not the traditional waterfall approach. And one of the things we found in a large enterprise, where we had to switch to agile, was around funding. Like we went to the board and we usually say, okay, we want to implement an ERP. Here's the cost over the next 24 months for transforming to an ERP model. We just didn't know. So we had to go to the board and say, okay, we want to spend $1 million next year in AI. We're not exactly sure yet, but we're going to come back and keep updating you. We're going to be responsible how we spend that money. But it was really important for the organization to move to a much more agile approach. and think about lots of little projects, POCs, testing value, testing feasibility, especially some things that weren't possible last week might be possible next week. So really important to kind of think about how to shift to a very different model, methodology, thought process inside organizations. Clearly, one of the things that you find with AI is that it brings up lots of complexity, objections, issues. Probably the number one that I've seen is around data privacy and cyber. It's just constant. We want to bring new technology in. The immediate thing is, okay, what is that? What is the data privacy aspect? But there's other governance, bias, HR impact. So one of the things that we did early on is we really took that strategy and a set of operating guidelines for the organization, behavioral guidelines for the organization around AI, and we kind of brought all the functional areas, HR, all the IT folks and governance and board, we aligned everybody to the mission and started to deal with these objections and concerns around cyber and security and so on. So it's really important to kind of manage the expectations and think about how you're going to think about it. This is a huge change management project, like we've seen in many other areas, but it comes with some extra concerns, especially around HR and humans and training, etc. So think about that. And then finally, because I spent a fair amount of time both on the vendor side of startups and early stage AI companies, and also with enterprises that have large platforms. The immediate thought in larger enterprises is, I've got an AI, I've got a vendor, an IT vendor, whether it's Salesforce or ServiceNow, whatever you pick, whatever your favorite ERP, SAP, whatever, and they've got an AI roadmap. And what I've noticed is that a lot of these AI roadmaps from larger enterprises is they're trying to minimize the impact on their world while they try to move their customers along. And so it's important to not just rely on your existing vendors in the AI journey, but really to think about how some startups, some early stage folks that might be working on a very specific business problem that's impactful. So let's say a layer 2 problem you have. Okay, here's a few smart people that are thinking about how to transform the design of networks and work with them versus trying to get that from Microsoft. That vertical industry, very specific knowledge is just not going to come about from those larger guys. So I kind of state how to engage with the smaller vendors to learn as much as you can. And then just to finalize on those enterprise, these are kind of effective ideas both for the enterprise, but also for folks in the room here that are vendors, thinking about how your enterprises will struggle to adopt your new AI technology. So you go and say, oh, look at this cool new thing, and they kind of go, cyber, governance, blah, 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 blah. And so I try to tell the vendor community is, you got to have all those answers nailed up. Here's my cyber document, here's my this, here's my governance document. You've got to basically be able to deal with that. Otherwise, you get stuck in this endless loop and you don't go anywhere. So really important to think about those adoption elements, both from a vendor side, but also from the enterprise side. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up and use some time to talk about 4 use cases, 4 companies that I know something about, I'm involved with them, and how they're working with enterprises, how they're helping companies solve specific problems using AI. So the first company is Spinoco, which is demonstrating outside. And what's really interesting is they're introducing a product targeting at the really small end of the market segment, micro SME market, called, let's say, 20 lines and less, and really how to help that small business operate more effectively. And also understanding those small businesses have no ability, no IT expertise, no AI expertise. So everything has to come out of the box, has to be kind of self-learning, self-developing. So what we do in that particular product is we take every customer interaction, whether it's social, digital, any digital channel, any voice, and we create a task. And then the tasks are auto-cataloged or auto-categorized by AI. And then employees can work those tasks to closure. So very different business model, really task oriented. And the other thing is these small businesses rarely have a CRM system. And so slowly as these interactions go through the platform over time, we're actually learning about those customers, and we're building kind of what I'm stealing from Joe Marion, a self-organized CRM. So if anybody's looking for good marketing, talk to Joe. He's got good things. And so very interesting opportunity to use AI in a very kind of light way. You don't put that right in front of the customers. It's really kind of thinking about it in the background and really delighting the customers with these capabilities. So that's an interesting use of AI in terms of making small businesses a lot more effective, more productive, being able to manage all the inbound. You know, I get Instagram DM, I get a messenger, I get a call, I get an email. How do I handle all that every day? It all comes to one platform, and these tasks are then managed. The second company, Kiwi Data, is tackling part of the enterprise that sometimes I rarely thought about, which is all of the contractual materials inside an organization. So think about, and especially if the organization's been around for a while, you have lots of contracts, you have NDAs, you have purchase orders, and then you have no idea what's in those contracts. I was talking to a European service provider last week, and they said, we sign contracts with large enterprise customers, and then we have no idea what we signed. We have no idea what's in there. We have no idea if we're fulfilling obligations. We have no idea whether or not we are billing correctly, etc. So the idea is to use AI to extract the relevant information out of those documents. Those could be customer-facing contracts. It could be your IT spend. You've got 20, 30 IT contracts. You don't know how much money you're spending. You don't know when renewals are, etc. Especially think about it if you have any kind of M&A, you've got multiple organizations, you probably have multiple contracts. How do you harmonize those? And then on the infrastructure side, how you might have lots of contracts, colos, connectivity, minutes, all kinds of third parties that you're paying, and really get a handle over your COGS and your evolution of your costs. So these are examples of how this company, who was working in kind of the logistics space, I asked them to kind of spend some time in the service provider space, because I think we have a fair amount of complexity in contractual stuff. And it goes down to even a simple thing. I'd like to use this example. A few weeks ago, I asked my operating partner, Jim, I said, do we have an NDA with somebody? And he said, oh, let me go with my SharePoint there and look at it and see if we've got, he couldn't remember. And really what we should have had is a chat interface, and I could have just typed and said, we have an NDA with this person. So think about that. Back to my point around retrieval, think about all that stuff. So pretty interesting area. And the other area that's pretty impactful is if you're doing any M&A, anybody's done any M&A, you drop a huge amount of money with lawyers reading contracts, an incredible amount of money. And can that be sped up? Could it be made cheaper? Can you really focus on the 10% of contracts that are super relevant to the M&A, not all of it? The third company is a company called Tato, and this is kind of an interesting use of what I sometimes call the unified communications exhaust. So it's all the stuff that goes on in the unified communications world, all the messaging, the text messages, the calls we transcribe, whether Zoom calls or Google or Microsoft. We have all these transcriptions, recordings, and we're not really sure what to do with all this stuff. And so what these guys have done is they've taken a model around project management, large project management. So going into an organization where 50 people are involved in a big implementation of an ERP system or a network or whatever. And there's so many meetings going on and so many sidebar conversations going on. And think about this AI, it's kind of an assistant listening to all of it, cataloging it, identifying risks, etc. So really important kind of model to look at how to take all that data that a lot of us create in our unified communication solutions and really leverage for project management. So quite a bit very interesting. And this software is kind of cross industry. We found really interesting use cases across domains. And then finally, one that's probably not so relevant, but kind of gives you some thoughts around personalization is a company called 10HQ, where we're able to really learn on a consumer side about consumer behavior by simply loading an SDK into your favorite mobile app, and we collect hundreds and hundreds and thousands of parameters, and we run them through AI models, and we can start learning about the consumer behaviors, trends, buying patterns, etc., so we can improve targeting and marketing to those organizations. So quite an interesting level of personalization. So instead of, imagine we have some case studies where we've done, companies have deployed a email marketing campaign, send 10 million emails that are exactly the same, and the take rate is very low. And suddenly you take that and you actually create email marketing campaigns around consumer behavior. So, hey, these set of consumers are into extreme sports. These are into drinking red wine, whatever, and you start to kind of tailor the content so you get better click-through, better engagement with the content. So just an interesting area of mass personalization that is capable, and it's kind of scary what's actually sitting on. When you look at the data dictionary on your phone, it's quite scary, all the data that you're able to extract out of it. Thankfully, the intent is you guys do this with your approval and with right privacy built in. So quite an interesting technology. And then, so those are the 4 use cases. Running out of time. A little bit, get back to my other example before with around capturing your company information using a JSON. Here's another very simple example, which I have tried. If anybody it seems like a fair number of people have not heard of Google Notebook LM. It's a really simple, free piece of software, technology. And what I've done here is just to demonstrate the capability of customer interaction data. So if I have a client, I'll record all of our calls, all of our meetings, and I'll take the transcript and I'll download it into Google LM. And then because it's only operating on the data that I've loaded, it's not using the large language models, it's loading the customer the transcripts I've loaded, you can now start extracting insights. Hey, what are the customer's concerns? What do they raise? What are the issues, etc. It's a really simple way of loading 10 customer calls and seeing exactly what you could do. So again, another way to experiment without big system cost and investments and so on. And then you can then take those insights and load them into your favorite CRM. Anyway, so wrapping up, AI is evolving fast. We all know that. It's moving really fast. I think that for too long, the service provider community, small, medium, large, and even the big guys, we haven't really changed the way we do things. We have to change the way we do things. Otherwise, those who do will wipe out the ones who don't. So think about if you think about doing things, quoting faster, installing faster, delivering faster. And so what I encourage everybody is think about something to try. When you leave here, go back and try it out. Find your first AI test case inside your organization, or your 10th if you're already on the roadmap. And thank you for your time. If you want a copy of the deck, just send an email to info@truenorthadvisory.us. With that, thank you.